Welcome back to Design Build Workshop. Let's talk Molle panels. Stick around to the end of the video because I've got a special offer. So this is arguably the most useful panel that I have, and it was the first one that I developed. Once I put the deck system in, I wanted a way to kind of close out or close up the back of the Jeep. So I had a long flat surface because of the deck system, and if I did want to load in a lot of stuff in here, which I could actually do now without the back seat. Now, I wanted to put this in here so I could kind of contain the load a little bit more. The other thing about what this one makes it really useful is if I want to pack extra gasoline, water, whatever, I've got a jerry can holder system that I developed that integrates in with the Molle panel system that I have. So I can put the 5-gallon, water can. I can put the 5-gallon jerry can. I can put multiple on here. This will hold 2 front to back, and it will hold 2 on the inside as well. So they'll actually bolt through to each other, so I could have 4 holders on each one of these. Because it's steel, I'd be very comfortable putting about 200 pounds on the Molle panel itself. I mean, I wouldn't have any problem hooking something on here and standing on it. It's really strong. It's held in. I've got little tabs that are up here, and that was designed so you could use straps or whatever. I used like a really heavy duty zip tie that goes to the roll bars all the way around the top and then down this side here. Like I said, there's a deck system in here. So what I've got on the bottom of this is there's a 90 degree bend with about that much material sticking out. And that's got holes drilled into it. And so I've got screws screwed right down into the deck itself. So it's secured on the bottom really well, and then these are basically just kind of holding everything in place. I've got the final version of this actually has holes that are drilled in between all of the squares, which is kind of standard for a Molle system. And one of the reasons you want to have that is so that you can attach stuff like this where it's got a single screw or multiple screws as long as they're spaced in the same way that you can put on here. These are actually set up for, I think I've got an axe, a shovel, and a pick that will hook in here. And as you can see on the inside, I've got Velcro straps that are holding in the toe strap I've got here. I've got a dump pouch here. I'm trying to remember what's in this one, but that's another Molle pouch. This one actually has all of my tie downs and ratchet straps, so that's accessible. The other side's got my fire extinguisher and a bunch of other stuff like that. There's a cutout here on this version, and the reason I did that was so that that's where the shoulder harness goes if you've got your back seat yet. And I wasn't committed to really actually getting rid of my back seat completely when I first designed these, so I made this little cutout. However, now if I ever do another version of this or another version for my Jeep specifically, I'm going to have that filled in, and the Molle will extend all the way through. But this would work with a Jeep that still has its back seats. The other great thing about having this in here is if I wanted to have an animal, say a dog or something, because I've got this flat deck back here, I'd be very comfortable putting blankets or a dog bed in here. As I could close off the back, I could easily haul a pet in the back of the Jeep, which comes in pretty handy as well.
Here you can see the panels as I got them back from the laser guy. They're very clean, however I still run an orbital sander over them just to knock down any sharp edges. Hey, if you're enjoying this content, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future projects. This is an example of some of the gear storage afforded by the panels. I made sure in my design that I could accommodate 2 jerry cans.
Now, as you can see, there's that 90 degree bend I have right here so that I can drill through here into the deck. And this was the prototype. So this is the one I believe is on my Jeep. So this was the next evolution. The changes here are that there's holes in between every square. The other change is that the space between here and here is less than what it was on the prototype. The reason these holes are in here is they're set up for a 1/4 20 screw. So there's enough room to put a 1/4 20 screw through without any kind of interference. And that's there so that if I want to bolt something to this, it's easily done. So on the door Molle panel, obviously there's a lot of modification to my door. We'll get into that later. but I didn't really like the plastic pocket that was here, and I wanted an addition for some Molle to be able to put some Molle accessories onto the door panel and to kind of back it up a little bit, so it gave me a little more room to accommodate that. This is just a dump pouch, but I use it as my trash bin, and I've got one on either side. I do have a med kit here, but you could put any number of things in here, but you just can't go really deep just because there's only so much room. The Jeep's pretty narrow. This can only come out so far, or your leg's already going to be hitting this, or the seat is going to be running into something else here. So this part is not that deep. The panel goes from almost to the front edge to the back edge right here. This is just a prototype piece that I have. Normally the one that's done for here also has the holes that are drilled through it to screw in other accessories that you want to put in. When you do this, you've got to modify the plastic door card pretty heavily. And then once you do that, you've got to back this piece in here. Otherwise, you're just going to see the inside of the door. So that was another modification I had to do for that. But like I said, that'll be a whole nother video where I'll show a modification of the doors.
Here's another shot of different gear on the door panel. It's pretty versatile.
So this is the first revision, the door panel. As you can see, this was the prototype. There were no holes drilled in between the squares, but everything else was done the way it's supposed to. Now, the good thing with this one is because there's no 90-degree bend or no break in this particular piece of metal, what makes this useful is that it's left or right. It doesn't matter what side of the Jeep it goes on, it's going to be just mount the same way. So Rev 2 actually has the holes in between. And this is really where the holes are kind of supposed to be, right in between, in the center of the 4 squares, and in between right here. So I think this is the final version I've done with the Molle panels. So here's the overhead Molle panel that's basically just running down the center section of the Jeep. So for this one, I thought it would be a good place to put like a medical kit or communications equipment. I have my binoculars in this case right here. The way it's held on is it goes slightly underneath this roll bar section, and that's just held in with zip ties. It doesn't really need to be any stronger than that. I mean, I've got some pretty heavy zip ties on here, so that works out pretty well. And in the front, where you've got the tie down for the strap to run up to that small metal tie down that's up there, I've got a cutout in the front of this panel, and it rests and kind of locks in place in that piece. The only other thing I have on here that's kind of modified is right here. You can see this kind of folds up at a 90, so there's a really small fold right here, but that gives it a lot of rigidity. The only thing I've got on here that's beyond just the metal work is I have some of that door protector molding stuff that you can put on the edge of your doors, and I have that on the top of this piece right here, and that's because when the wind blows, the top, this is one of those summer tops, hangs down pretty low. The regular top doesn't hang this low, but the summer top does, or safari top. And so that rubs against this. And so with the rubber protector on here, it doesn't bother the material at all. So, but this one I really like a lot. It's nice and sturdy. Like I said, I think it's pretty useful for a lot of things. So, this has been a good addition.
This is a good view showing how the front of the Molle panel is held in place.
Okay, so here is the overhead panel in its final configuration. So the slots back here, that's for the straps to go through to the roll bar that's right behind your head. And then this large opening right here is to rest on that piece of metal that holds that strap, or if you were to fold down your windshield, this is one of the ways you hold it down. But anyway, this rests right in there. So when this goes on there, I also put a strap across that, so that secures it so it doesn't move. And then these two slots back here secure to the rear roll bar, and that's what really holds it in place. This also has the 90-degree bends in it. This is rounded off so I don't have a sharp edge, because now we're getting close to the roof if you've got a soft top. And this is also the part that I put the rubber gasket piece on to kind of protect the cloth from the metal edges, so I wouldn't have any kind of issue with wearing the fabric away. The big thing when designing these, like I said before, is that because the metal is an 1/8 inch thick, one of the problems is the way the Molle system works is it's really supposed to go from a Molle pouch going on to like a vest. and you're just talking about real thin pieces of fabric being woven in between each other. The problem with this is because it's steel or because it's metal, it's an 1/8 inch thick. So that 1/8 inch is taking up a lot of space. So when you weave that fabric through there, it doesn't go as far as it would if it was just going in between another piece of fabric. So one of the ways to alleviate that is to make the space between the squares less, so that I don't have so much material to weave around. And that will help, get your pieces to actually buckle up or snap together. So as long as you have your own software, designing and building your own Molle panel system is pretty easy. You just have to make sure you're watching for a couple things. One, make sure that your measurements are accurate. So in other words, Molle is the original military Molle system, very specific in its measurements. So basically, it's 1 inch of an opening, 1 inch of a strip, right? And then just kind of keep alternating back and forth like that. I've gotten a number of pouches that are from China or something like that, or not produced by an American company, or even some that are produced by an American company that don't really fit the grid pattern like it should. They're close, but not quite. So just make sure that when you're doing your Molle system or laying out the measurements, that it's accurate as you can get it, and that'll give you, save you a little grief in the long run. I use steel, and I use steel very specifically because I wanted it for the structural strength, and also that I could make it pretty thin. A lot of people talk about trying to use aluminum. The only problem with aluminum is if you go with 1/8 inch, it's not going to be very strong. It's not, and plus I think it'll dent. I've worked both with aluminum and steel, quite a bit with both, and I'm pretty sure, in my opinion, that 1/8 inch aluminum is just not going to hold up. Plus, I don't think it'll scratch a whole lot easier. Steel is just a little bit tougher, and like I said, I really like the strength of it a whole lot more. When you're doing the overall layout, like I said, I like to use cardboard to make a template and make sure you lay it in the space that you want to have it. Make sure it's exactly where you want it, and compare that to the measurements that you've done in your 3D design work. When you send your 3D design file, like your STL file or your, the modeling file to the guy who's going to do your laser, water jet, or plasma work, make sure your scale is 1:1. Make sure that your 1 inch is actually 1 inch. I've had times where I've sent a file and I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention, and something got hit or switched, and all of a sudden you've got something that's 1 1/4 of the size that it's supposed to be, and you have a panel that you get back that you just paid $500 for and you can't use because it won't fit. So make sure that you're comparing those measurements and double checking those measurements that they're exactly right. This project is very doable as long as you have the software. There's lots of free software out there that can handle this type of thing. So I would give it a shot, and there's no reason not to. If you've got any questions about anything, go ahead and say something in the comments, and I'll answer it. Anyway, it's a great project, and I think very useful. So I asked you to stick around to the end of the video for a special offer. So here's what I'm going to do for all of the subscribers, or all of my subscribers. I will go ahead and send a free file of any one of the Molle panels that you particularly like, whether it's the rear Molle panel, the overhead, or the door Molle panel. And I will send you the file that you can take to your metal shop that's got a laser cutter and go ahead and get those pieces cut out. So just let me know in the notificator, in the comments, that you're a subscriber and that you would like the file for the rear Molle panel, or whichever one you'd like. Anyway, thanks for coming back to Design Build Workshop, and I hope to see you next time.